If you're a tennis player that feels totally stuck in your technique on your forehand, your backhand, your serve, or any stroke, then this video is really important for you to watch. I'd like to walk you through one of my practice sessions that I just did earlier this week, working on my backhand that has been a lifelong problem for me. It's always been my weakest shot. And it's a shot that I just recently started really going to the trouble of going through the learning process step by step, the way that we do it with our students, to try to learn how to reverse my old habits. So let's go right to the court. I'll show you exactly what I did on this day. And I began by walking out, starting the ball machine, and just hitting a couple of forehands just to get relaxed. I just wanted to get myself moving a little bit. And after a couple of forehand ground strokes, I did some shadow swings. And now, if you've been watching our content, you know that I'm aware that my backhand sucks. I'm very aware of it. I know exactly what my problems are. If you look here at my shadow swings, you'll see that these are like my idealized version of what I would like my one-handed backhand to be. And the main points here, the main technical elements that I've personally been focusing on are, number one, the angle of my racket as I start to drop it down into the slot position here. I tend to open my racket really early and swing really flat. And so I've been working on trying to learn this new take back position and this new drop position with my racket. And then the other part that is really a weakness of mine is my contact position right here. My wrist tends to be really curled and bent upwards, and my contact position tends to be really close to my body. And I just get into this this weak, late position. And so the combination of opening my racket early, a flat racket path, and a late contact point means zero topspin and zero ability to shape the ball at all. It means zero ability to really hit a very aggressive or offensive shot that has any chance of being consistent. So this shadow swing is basically representation of exactly what I would ultimately like my one-handed backhand to look like. And so this is, on this particular day, this is the first time I've worked on my backhand in a while. It's something that I've been shadow swinging in the office and just kind of thinking about, but I haven't really practiced. And so I'm hoping here, if I can just kind of tell you my thoughts in my head as I click the ball machine button, my hope here is that I go through my shadow swings, remind myself these are the positions that I want to be able to hit. I'm hoping that when I hit that ball machine remote, I can just go ahead and be in the ballpark of what I just did, reminding myself those positions, reminding myself that execution. So let's see how I did. So here's the very first repetition with the ball coming from the ball machine. And take a look at my racket face here. I'll show you a side-by-side in a second. Here's that flat swing path I was talking about, and here's that close contact position that I was talking about. And so here is a side-by-side comparison. Ian on the, which one is which? Ian on the right is my last shadow swing that I took right before I clicked play on the ball machine, right before I clicked start on the ball machine. This is my ideal slot position right here. Ian on the left is the very next repetition, the first ball that I hit with the ball machine after reminding myself the position that I want to be in. And so they're completely different. In fact, I've basically just essentially gone right back to my old habit. 5 seconds later, 5 seconds earlier, I did my ideal shadow swing. 5 seconds later, here's my repetition with the ball actually coming towards me. And so look at the swing path here, how far my racket is dropping, how I'm coming up to contact with the racket square to make contact. And this is reality. Is that open racket face kind of dragging forwards. This is kind of like a drive slice kind of hybrid, coming from outside in instead of inside out. For those of you who are kind of swing nerds. And then here's my contact position compared to the other contact position. Very close. My hand is really kind of rigid here and tight. So why does this happen? How is this possible where I clearly know what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm able to do it correctly without a ball, and 5 seconds earlier I did a absolutely perfect shadow swing, exactly what I want to do, but when the ball comes, it's like, well, it all just disappears. The answer is habit. The answer is there's a program that's been drilled into your mind, or at least for me, I've been playing tennis for decades with bad habits. And so after 10, 20, 30 years of doing something a certain way, it doesn't matter how badly you want to just snap your fingers and change it. It doesn't change without training. So how do you fix something like this? Let me show you exactly what I did. After reviewing the video and seeing the contrast between my shadow swing and what I was hoping would be a in the ballpark repetition, I was like, okay, clearly this is way too much challenge with the ball just being fed at me. So I need to take several steps back. So what I did next was I came back out to the baseline. I did some more shadow swings to realign my body and my feeling with, I'm answering a question there, my feeling with what it is that I wanted to do with my body. I reminded myself about the angle here and my contact position. And so now what I'm gonna do is grab a couple of balls and I'm just gonna do some drop feed hits with some shadow swings in between. And so here's one shadow swing where I'm trying my best to execute exactly what I want to do in real life. And then after that shadow swing, I'm going to drop a ball. And so I get a little closer here. This racket face is starting to square up a little bit at the bottom of the drop. I'm okay, in case you're wondering, I'm okay with this open racket face initially. I would like to see it square by the time I get down to the bottom of my racket drop. So I'm okay with this right here. Ideally, I'd like to see the square racket face a little bit earlier in my drop, but this is a good step in the right direction compared to what I was doing before. And then from there, my goal is to keep the racket square and go all the way out to contact without this bend in my wrist right here, which is a habit that I think I've developed just from having such a flat swing path all these years. I think I've developed this curl in my wrist as a way of just kind of getting the ball over the net. Because if I were to swing straight on with a flat wrist and a square racket face, every ball I hit would be going into the net. So I think this curling of my wrist has been to kind of shovel the ball over the nets. And I've never had a really vertical swing path, and so I've never been able to relax and just allow my wrist to relax. A little bit of this is fine. In fact, you'll see most world-class one-handed backhand players have a little bit of this bend, but you can see here in the replay that it's not a comfortable, natural position for me. I'm not squaring the racket up. I'm still opening the racket, and my contact position, I'd like to be a lot further in front with a little bit more of a neutral wrist. So this is a pattern that I repeated for a little while, doing several shadow swings, and then trying to recreate. Again, I'm pretty happy with that angle of the racket. And then there's that contact position again. So I did this once or two more times, and then I came back to the iPad and reviewed. And then after I saw this position, I set up the iPad again, just push record again, walk back out. My iPad is on a tripod, just sitting there, so I can review it, click record, click pause, go through it really quickly, go back out to where the ball machine is. And so after reviewing this, I went back out again to try to work on that contact position specifically. So at this point in my practice, Kevin is sitting over by the net post. He's doing a little bit of work on his laptop, and he's telling me, hey, practice reps are looking pretty good. And I explained to him, like, well, I'm pretty happy with the, Kevin calls this the butt pull position. I'm telling him, yeah, I'm actually pretty happy with my execution here, but you'll see me mimic this. But I tell him my contact point I'm really not happy with, and I'm explaining to him how I get kind of scrunched up and my wrist flexes. Extends rather, and I get into that really tight, close contact position. So just kind of explain to him, like, that's kind of my focus now. Pretty happy with the racket on edge, and now it's a matter of getting out to here is like, what I'd absolutely love to see is a contact position like this, with a little bit of extension in the wrist, but not a ton, and getting nice and far out away from my body. And so this continues to be my focus for a little while, doing more shadow swings. Pretty happy with this slot position here. Be nice to get it square a little bit earlier, but it's pretty good, pretty happy with that. And you can see that I still have that extended position with my wrist. And so I'm feeling for this now. I'm like trying to grab onto something that lets me know physically, like in that moment, whether or not I did it correctly. And you'll see that through these reps, it still just isn't very good. And here I'm making an effort to get a little further out away from my body. This might be a little bit better, but you can see that my racket face is still really open and I'm still pretty extended with my wrist. And you can tell that through contact, it's just not as fluid as it really should be, at least not what I'm shooting for. So after a couple more practice reps, I go back to the iPad, I check it out, I'm not happy with it, and so that's when I decide to really take some drastic steps. When we work with students in person, if you watch the films of us working with students and making big changes in their strokes, one of the strategies you'll frequently see us use, or tools that you see us use, is exaggeration. So after coming back to the iPad and seeing that I'm just still not happy with how tight and how extended that wrist position is, I decided to try to do it the other way. I told myself when I looked at that clip, all right, that's it. What would it take to actually have my wrist rounded at contact or flexed forwards? And so you'll see me come out here after reviewing, practicing my slap position, and now you see me actually close my racket face and go out towards contact. And my goal here was to actually see, okay, what would it take to actually curl my wrist? And you see me just kind of feeling here and experimenting. What would that be like compared to like what a natural, normal contact position would be? What would it take for me to actually be flexed at contact? And so this is me just kind of feeling through that. Looks like I'm definitely skeptical about what I'll be watching in a minute. But my goal here was to see if I could do a rep where I was actually a little bit exaggerated and flexed at contact. And so now when I go forwards with that being my goal, you see that I'm a lot more extended with my arm and my shoulder. My racket face is coming up to the ball, actually starting to get pretty square. And there's a little bit of extension in my wrist, but this is looking pretty comfortable now. This is starting to look like what you see on TV with like world-class players compared to what I normally am like really scrunched and super uncomfortable and super tight. So this is critical to understand. This is me attempting to hit like this, and I end up being like this. And this is unbelievably critical. When you have a long-term ingrained habit, making a change, incremental changes feel huge. And so for me, going from this to this feels like I'm curling my wrist and flexing my wrist the opposite direction, but it's in reality not even close to that. But the internal sensation, the internal experience becomes so detached from reality because of the ruts and the grooves that we drill ourselves into doing it the wrong way again and again and again. And so it takes sometimes what feels like an extreme movement to get yourself back into what in reality is what you actually want. And so I do a couple more reps like this, where I'm really starting to try to exaggerate my wrist position, my contact position. You see on my shadow swings, I'm really closing the racket face a lot. This would be a really aggressive, this would definitely hit the net if I actually hit a ball in that way with my racket face that closed. And so I'm exaggerating my shadow swings. Look at my pole position here, my slot position is exactly what I'd like to see it. Maybe a little bit too extended with my arm away from my body, but in terms of the angle, really happy with this now that I'm starting to try to exaggerate that wrist position. And now it's starting to look pretty solid now that I'm starting to exaggerate. This is in reality what I'd really, really like to see from myself from a contact position. Pretty happy with that also. And so I just have to reiterate, like in the picture, it's like, oh, that looks comfortable. In reality, to myself, my own kinesthetic feeling, this is like wildly exaggerated. And this is what it takes frequently. And I would never, ever know that I was that far off and it took that exaggerated of a feeling to get it where I wanted it to be without the video. Without the video, I never would have believed that I was that far off initially to me, it's like, oh, that feels better. I bet you that's pretty close. But the video showed me something completely different. And so if you want to change your strokes, the video is unbelievably critical. Like there's just no way around it. If you're a new player and you don't have really ingrained habits like I do, maybe you can get away without it, and somebody can just tell you, oh, it just feels like brushing up on the ball, and you just do it the right way. If you're not a great athlete and you've been playing for a long time, and by great athlete I mean like pretty elite, like exceptional athlete, and you've been playing a long time with bad habits, it's not enough to just be told, oh, do it this way instead. I knew I was supposed to do it the other way instead, and I still wasn't able to execute it correctly. I look at these, pictures, images of world-class players and very average players and put them side by side every single day. And I know my problems, and I still wasn't able to just do it just because I wanted to do it. So, did some more repetitions, checked them out on video. So let's do a little comparison. On the left side here is one of those repetitions that I just showed you where I was trying to exaggerate the wrist position. And on the right is that very first repetition off of the ball machine that I did after my shadow swings. That I was really confident with my shadow swings. I took that first swing. And so let's take a look at the contrast and technique between the two. Here's my racket position. As I approach that pole position, you can see how I'm squaring the racket pretty much right away. This is probably one of my better executions, as opposed to, oh, that was a bad line, as opposed to here. You can see how weak and open my racket position is here, and how I'm pulling with an open racket face towards contact, as opposed to a square, closed racket face here. And you can see how my racket head is dropping below the point of contact. Here's contact on my other one. I'll make a little ball mark here. Here's contact on this one. And so the lowest my racket drops, it's just really not dropping at all on this one, just a little bit. Here's my drop position on my ball machine hit. It's a very lateral, flat swing path. And here's my lowest position on this practice rep. You can see how, it's not a dramatic improvement, but it's an improvement. This is a big improvement with my racket face. This is a big improvement with the dropping of my racket below the point of contact. And this is a big improvement with the position of my wrist at contact. And so 3 good steps in the right direction. You can see how the one on the left, I'm extending forwards with my arm much better, whereas previously I was a little bit more, I was later, and my wrist was in a weaker position. And so now I'm actually coming up and lifting and giving some topspin to the ball, whereas previously I was really just hitting straight through it, and then this is like a bogus follow through where I'm going forward straight to the ball, and then after contact, I'm lifting my racket because I know I'm supposed to finish high. And on this one, I'm actually lifting the ball. My racket's actually coming up through contact. And so I have some ability to make topspin with this execution, whereas my other one, forget about it. There's zero potential or ability to create topspin. So I've only arrived at this point because I had video. I watched myself and I looked and I said, holy crap, it's just not even close. B, instead of just going back to the ball machine and just I better hit more backhands and just hit a ton more backhands off the ball machine, I took multiple steps back. I did some shadow swings combined with some just drop hit repetitions. And then when I still wasn't doing everything the way that I was hoping, I also did some exaggerated repetitions in the opposite direction, which for me ended up actually being what I wanted to be in reality. So these are the steps that most players don't take, and a lot of coaches don't take either. Some coaches do. They're using video. They're doing the hard work of slowing things down, doing shadow swings, really isolating things, and having their students focus on small parts of their technique and actually verifying whether or not they're doing it correctly. This all takes a lot more discipline. It takes a lot more effort, even when you're just by yourself and you're not with a partner. And so I created this video because I wanted to show you the process that I was going through. And now from here, what I would like to do is start to receive some ball machine feeds again, double check what I'm actually doing. And if I'm totally going back to my old habit, then I would drop a few more balls. And so it's a matter now of managing the level of challenge so that I can actually do what I want to be doing, and then do enough of those repetitions that it starts to become familiar, and then it's just a process of slowly building a snowball or momentum, pushing momentum in the right direction instead of just going right back to the old habit every time. So is my backhand fixed? Absolutely not. Do I know exactly what I need to do? Absolutely. And so it's a matter now of slowly rewriting that old program, moving in the right direction. Hopefully this has been helpful to you and gives you some encouragement and some ideas how to work on your own technique. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and click like, leave your comments, leave your questions down below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.